sir.
Black is night, grace death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate make it right.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Welcome to the Coven, Witches and Weirdos, Ghosts and Ghouls. It's time for a special Samhain episode of the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Happy Halloween!
Woo!
Thank you for joining us on this most blessed day.
Yay, I'm so excited for Halloween.
Me too. What are you going to dress up as?
I'm not sure. I have two costumes that I have to wear. Maybe either a witch. I just have like a black velvet dress and a hat. Or I could do Lydia from Beetlejuice, which is more just black clothes and a black hat.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
And what about you?
I'm going to be a witch, of
Ooh.
course. I found this really cool old dress. Actually, it's not that old. It's probably from the 2000s. But it's just this really long black dress with really short sleeves. And then I found this pretty white shirt to go underneath. It's kind of like see-through, almost like a tablecloth is what it looks like. But when you have it on underneath, it makes it look like I'm wearing an old witch costume. And then it has this rope for a belt. It was already on the dress like that.
That's awesome.
And I found a leather witch hat with orange ribbon on it.
That sounds so cute. I can't wait to see pictures.
Yeah. And then I'm going to wear black flat shoes because I can't wear high heels anymore. I just can't put myself through it.
I stopped trying.
Yeah. I just got these black tennis shoes.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm more about comfort these days than anything. I'm really excited. I've got my jack-o'-lantern all carved and all that good stuff.
Yay.
Yeah. So should we do some of our Halloween-themed cauldron topics?
Yes. We added all these great, fun Halloween topics to our cauldron today. So let's see what's inside. I forgot we had all of these. I'm actually really excited. Okay, so the first one is, what have been some of your favorite costumes that you've worn and or made?
I'm trying to think of only my Halloween ones since I cosplay as well. But
oh, yeah.
I honestly am biased. I really liked Lydia, which I made last year. It was just so casual and comfortable. And as a kid, I would be Snow White for like 5 years, so I guess I should say Snow White.
I remember that.
Yeah.
You were a perfect Snow White.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah.
I think my stepmom was like, how come you don't cosplay as Snow White? I don't understand. Like, you were obsessed with her. I'm like, I don't know. Been there, done that. What about you?
Okay, so when I was a kid, I have these two really cute Halloween outfits that my mom made for me. One was strawberry shortcake.
Oh my God.
And because it was the 80s, it was like, it's had this, we bought the mask. It was a strawberry
creepy.
Shortcake mask. And it was made out of plastic. Remember those old little plastic
Yes, with
rubber,
like a
well, they weren't even rubber.
On the back? Oh, no.
Yeah, with the string. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then she made me this Care Bear costume. And then afterwards, we turned the Care Bear into a stuffed animal.
That's pretty cute. How big was this costume if it was a stuffed animal?
I was pretty small.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was probably made for a toddler, but I was probably 6 when I wore it.
So you just stuffed it, and did you have like the bear head?
It had the head that was already on it. So it was kind of like a shirt almost. And then I painted my face.
Okay, that's adorable.
And then afterwards it was turned into this bear. It was like little lion heart.
Uh-huh. Aww.
Yeah.
The Care Bear cousin?
Yes, Care Bear cousin, Lionheart.
Yes, he's so cute.
And then making one, what was the favorite one that you made?
Oh, man. I'm kind of blanking. You go. Do you have one off the top of your head?
I do, but it wasn't for myself. I made the 2 costumes for my kids this same year. So I went and took the kids shopping, and I was like, what do you guys want to be? We went to a thrift store. They picked some stuff out, and then we made it what they wanted. So for my daughter, I made her this really beautiful, like I hand sewed all these embellishments onto this dress, and she was like this fairy goddess princess. Mm-hmm. So I braided her hair. Aww. And I made this cape that I had sewn on. I took stuff all around the house and just sewed it on this dress and made her this gorgeous goddess. And then my son, and mind you, he was only like 6. He was like, I want to be something crazy insane. And so we found this little orange jumpsuit, like a jail, like that you would find on somebody who was in jail. Mm-hmm. Put that on him. And then I gave him this like white construction hat that we found, and I painted his face gray, and I put these red handprints on the hat, and he was just a scary looking evil little 6-year-old.
That's the best kind of 6-year-old to have on Halloween.
That's right.
That's pretty cool. I don't know if I have like a favorite. I'm just gonna stick with Lydia for now, since that was last year's. But I kind of just thrifted the pieces, but then modified them. So like hemming the sleeves of like a little blazer, and like painting the buttons and trimming like the dress. And I went in kind of looking for 2 ideas. I was like, okay, this year I have black hair. I just want to do something with like a character with black hair, either Mia Wallace from Pulp Fiction or Lydia. So I honestly assumed that I would find a Mia Wallace costume, just wearing like a white button-up shirt and some capri black pants. Surprisingly, I didn't find any button-up shirts at all that like fit me. And so I found like this big old lady black dress that I was like perfect for Lydia. It's like the costume she's wearing when she's going outside, and she has the big sun hat on, and she's taking like pictures of the attic window from the outside.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and so I did my bangs with like little spikes, and that was really fun. And I almost want to wear it again this year, like I was mentioning, but I would just have to style a wig like today to get that done. So right. I think I might do that. But yeah, I'm just kind of partial to that costume right now.
Yeah, how fun. Okay, let's move on.
Yes, I was just thinking the same thing.
We have so many topics in this cauldron. I'm sorry we talked too long.
How dare you?
So, I know. Okay, if you could speak with anyone who has passed on, who would it be?
Oh, like through a Ouija board or anything?
Or
just,
if
like,
you
have
had
a
the
conversation.
ability to talk to spirits. Yeah.
This sounds lame, but it's the first one that popped into my head, so I'll go with it. But like, everyone probably says this, but maybe Marilyn Monroe, and just like interview her.
Okay.
That
cool.
I've always thought she was fascinating and just kind of misunderstood, and seemed like a sweet, sensitive person, and it would be kind of interesting to know, like, just to talk to her as almost like a comforting girlfriend, you know?
Aw, I love it. And you guys could totally connect.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell me about Kennedy, and what did he say about aliens? What about you?
Well, you know, my best friend Wendy, she passed away in 2010, so that would be who I would talk to. I miss her.
That's a way better answer.
Oh my gosh, stop.
I'm like, oh, that's like so heartfelt and meaningful. I mean, yeah, that would be amazing to be able to talk at least one more time.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the next one is, what is your favorite ghost movie?
Ooh, so many just came to my mind. If I have to narrow it down to one, I really love the Insidious movie. 1 and 2 I like a lot, but I almost like 2 more, where it goes into the backstory of like the Lady in Black kind of thing. What about you?
Yeah, that one's a really good one.
Yes.
Mine's The Others.
Okay, I need to rewatch that movie because I watched it once when it came out and I barely remember it. I was kind of young.
Yeah, so. I know it could be boring in spots, but the fact that they're dead and don't know it, it always gets me every time.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw that was probably The Sixth Sense, that kind of the whole idea.
Oh, yeah. It was funny because when my kids were little, their dad went off to war, and that movie had come out. Uh-huh. And so I was watching it, and they begged me to watch it with them. And I was like, okay, but you're awfully young. This is going to be scary. And we all sat down, and they were like, oh, no, Mom's going to kill us. I'm like, oh, my God, you guys are dramatic.
Yeah.
For years, they've been saying, We're really just dead because mom killed us back then.
Nice. Just filling their heads with these horrible, morbid ideas.
I know, right? Okay, let's see what else is in here. Okay, what are your favorite Halloween movies? Like your go-tos?
Like on Halloween day, I feel like I always need to watch Hocus Pocus during the day usually. And then at night, like if there's trick-or-treaters coming out or you're just hanging out at someone's house, I want to be watching Halloween. Like you got to be watching Halloween.
Nice. So for me, I always have to watch Practical Magic.
Oh, really? That's so cute. I love that movie.
Yeah, love that one. And I know we talk about it all the time, but it's like my favorite.
I was like, listeners know we love that movie. But...
Yes. And then I like to watch Nightmare on Elm Street. I usually watch just the first one. That's my favorite. Mm-hmm. Good old young Johnny Depp.
So Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger, he is so creepy. I remember watching that movie for the first time. Actually, I think I saw the second one on cable TV, and like it was just this scene where his like best friend or the neighbor kid gets all of his skin ripped off, and that's all I saw for like 2 minutes. Yeah, and I just was traumatized for like months.
You're like, do you remember there's a 3rd Street in Salem?
Oh.
And so when I was a kid, that movie came out and we were all terrified to go trick-or-treating down that street because it's 3rd Street.
Like in West
Or not
Salem?
3rd Street. I'm sorry.
Elm Street.
There's yeah. Why did I say 3rd Street?
We're losing it.
I know, totally. What's in my coffee? So yeah, Elm Street. So we were all terrified to go on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We were like, oh my God, Freddy Krueger's down there.
Yeah, with good reason. Don't go down.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. What's next?
Next one is, do you have a favorite Halloween tale, like memory? I have this one. There was this one Halloween that I think I was probably in the 8th grade and I really wanted to go all out. So we decorated our whole house, and then I went and bought one of those styrofoam heads and I decorated it with a wig, and I put this makeup on it, and I made this whole face and made it into a witch, and then put the head on this round table with a cloth on it. And then decorated it so it looked like her head had been chopped off and put on this table, so that when the door was opened, all the kids saw this witch with her head cut off.
Did they like it?
So horrible. Yes. Kids were screaming. It was great.
I was such a baby when there would be houses with music on. In my old neighborhood, there was always like this guy who had loud music, and it was just so eerie. I would normally like scream and cry and just stand on the sidewalk, and then Alan and Sarah, my brother and sister, would just go get the candy for me and bring it to me. But this was like pre-1st grade. Like I remember being very young.
Right. Yeah.
But I guess speaking of a Halloween memory, when I was like in middle school, I remember lying to my mom about going trick-or-treating, and she's like, okay, well, is Alex's parents going with you, my friend? And I was like, yeah, of course. And like no parents came with us. And I guess it was a big deal at the time. Like you shouldn't be going around trick-or-treating by yourself. I guess I don't know if that's normal or not. But
it is.
We were probably in 7th grade. Or no, 6th grade. We were in the 6th grade. And so we were walking down this street, and these teenagers, they kind of just like look at us, and they keep walking or whatever. We go down to a house, and then we come back, and one of them jumps out of the bushes, takes my friend's bag of candy, which just happens to have her dad's really expensive cell phone. This was like pre-common cell phone. It was like the size of a cordless house phone. And he ran away, and it was gone. And so she just starts crying and crying. She's like, oh my God, I'm going to tell my dad I lost his phone. So we go back up to the house, and we like knock on the door, and we're like, can we use your phone? Can we please use your phone? This guy stole our candy. And this man was so disturbed by us. I'm like, why do you want to come in here? No, you cannot come in my house. I'll see if the cord stretches out to you. And like, he was so annoyed to be helping us.
Oh my gosh.
That's
a good tale.
I never told my mom about that lie. So
hopefully she doesn't listen to this then.
So do we have any more you wanted to do, or should we move on?
We just have one more.
Okay, let's do it.
One more. Okay, what's your favorite Halloween candy?
Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt.
Believe it or not, mine's Tootsie Rolls. I know that sounds
so disappointed
boring.
in yourself, and I can see why.
I just love them for some reason. Actually, I really used to love mounds, but I'm allergic to coconut, so...
Oh, yeah. I never really liked coconut candy. Yeah. Tootsie Rolls were so common. It's like when I would dump out my candy, like as soon as I got home, and I'd be like, rah, like a cannibal, like just looking for the Rice Krispies. What did I say? Rice Krispies.
Reese's.
The Reese's. Like that was my main goal. And I would usually only get like 1 or 2. And then my dad would be like, gotta take my taxes. So he took like one of mine away. Like a jerk he is. But I would be...
Yeah, my parents always used to take mine too.
Right, I would be like gluttonous. I could eat my like Halloween candy in a matter of weeks.
Oh, yikes.
I knew kids who were like, I still have it all year round. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, all year.
I don't know how that's possible. If there's something sweet in the house and I know it's there, I'm going to go snack on it like for at least 20 minutes and just put things in my mouth. So I don't have chips at the house. I don't have cookies. I can't have anything because if it's here, it's gone immediately.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah. Halloween didn't teach me anything about rationing food. It was just a really gluttonous time for me.
You're like, more. I need more.
Yeah. And I would look forward like all year to Halloween. And I was just obsessed with not only the candy, like the fat ass that I am, but I was really into dressing up. Like I was obsessed with like being pop culture characters. I was like, ooh, am I going to be Dorothy or Jeannie from I Dream of Jeannie? And like I would go back like every other month just debating it. And I guess that's where cosplay came down the line in my life. So in my 20s, I was like, oh, you can do this all year round?
You're like, yes.
Yeah. So now when it comes time for Halloween, I'm like, oh, it doesn't even matter what I wear. But like, because I'm dressing up all year round, like, I don't know, you can't compare. It's like, it's not that special anymore. It's every day.
Right.
So I guess we can move on with our second half of our cauldron topics.
Yes. Let's go.
Yeah. So we are celebrating Samhain today, which is like the major Sabbath for Wiccans and witches. It's the witch's new year, and it begins a time to make changes and try to better yourself and make new declarations for the new year, typically. And it's just end of the summer and prepping for the winter, basically a harvest festival. And it's said that the veil between the worlds is at its thinnest. And so it's a great time to be developing and using your psychic abilities. And so on Halloween night, you should be really doing some tarot, scrying, runes, palmistry, anything like that. You should be getting really good results. And you can do like a tarot spread to kind of give you a reading for like the next year to come. So I'm definitely going to do a big like tarot reading tonight and see how that goes.
Yes, me too.
Woo, we'll have to report back our findings later to each other.
Yeah.
And this is also the time to have your altar up in honor of your dead ancestors. I actually have mine up year round, but during Samhain, I will like put offerings on there. Usually I have my pets up there, their little urns. So I'll put like little cat treats up there and maybe like a little thing of wine for my relatives that have passed on. And I put their photos and light the candles for them. And I just get really into it, putting like harvest leaves and greenery on the altar. And I have that going all night. And I usually will do like a little ritual beforehand or a little prayer and just dedicate that sacred space and really make it a special time.
Nice.
And it's also said to be a time to connect with the Dark Mother, the crone goddess aspect. So you really want to like use her when you're doing your ritual workings, pray to the crone and do divination with her. And your results should be really powerful.
I'm all thinking, I'm the crone.
You're like, I am the crone. I think it's good for all of us to embrace our crone aspect and harness that. So do you ever do like a Samhain altar or anything like that?
I mean, I've set stuff out as far as to ancestors. I think I've done more of a Dia de los Muertos. Even though I'm not Hispanic, I still kind of celebrate that. Is that really Hispanic origin, you think? Or was that...
I was also reading that, I guess, like, there was ancient Mexican culture, it was around November 1st, but Dia de los Muertos is like, how many years is that?
I thought it was November 1st,
it is the
2nd,
1st.
3rd.
Okay, so Samhain is from the 31st to the 1st, so it's basically the same exact thing. Just different strokes.
So for me, I always felt that Halloween was a party time. So I didn't realize until recently that Samhain was really the new year for Wicca. I was like always celebrating this just like it was a new year.
Right.
So that's
true.
how. Yeah, that's how I celebrate it. What was that? Is everything okay?
I was hoping you wouldn't pick that up, but that is just an ambulance driving by.
Okay.
I'll say everything's okay, but really there could be some person dying down the street, and I don't know.
Oh,
Everything's fine.
true.
So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Like, I think originally Halloween was a major party for me, and it was like, yeah, get dressed up, look real cute, get drunk, and now I'm kind of more excited just to like stay in and be at my altar and that kind of thing.
Right, right. Yeah, I think the past couple of years have been, well, maybe not the past couple of years, maybe the last 5 years have been about handing out candy. But last year I did do something different. And for me, it was all about connecting with my spirit guide. And I did a lot of meditation and reflection. This year, I'm taking my little granddaughter out for trick-or-treating. So that's what I'll be doing this year.
That's so exciting.
Yes. And then after she goes to bed, I'm going to probably do a bunch of tarot stuff.
Yes. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
I never get to
Yeah.
do tarot with people who are willing to read like for me. I'm always the one having to read, and I'm such a noob at it, and it takes me a long time to even figure out sometimes what a thing could mean.
Yeah. Sometimes, even though I've been doing it for years, sometimes it doesn't click with me until an event has happened. Oh, that's what that meant.
That's true, because one card can mean so many things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I know you did a little bit of research about Halloween in America. Did you want to share some of that?
Yes, I do. So Halloween in America actually dates back to colonial days, where they would have parties, dress up, and tell ghost stories and celebrate and give thanks for the harvest. They would tell fortunes and dance and sing and basically just have a really good time. It was a time for them to get down, just like New Year's. So they used it as a harvest festival. Mm-hmm. To celebrate all the work that they just accomplished, and so that the next year to kind of give blessings for the next year. So then in the late 1800s, there was an influx of immigrants to the Americas, and famine became a reality, which is really sad, I know. But that's when the tradition of trick-or-treating began, and parents would dress up their kids and have them go door to door begging for food or money. It was kind of a means for them to provide for the family.
So
and then
I'm wondering when that's happening, are the poor kids are going to some other side of town where they just thought they had more wealth and money? Like, what did they have to share?
Yeah, so they would just go whatever they would take anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just candy, it was potatoes, carrots, vegetables, meat, anything that could be provided. And so they would bring sacks with them. So it wasn't our cutesy little pumpkins and stuff like that we have today. It was literally sacks.
I would be so down with
food.
That still being a tradition. Like, hey, what you got in your pantry? Do you have anything like
That's right.
vegan?
Let's do a trade. Yeah. Let's do a trade.
I'll take your Oreos.
I could use some strawberries.
Yeah.
And then between the 1920s and 1950s, it started becoming considered a holiday. It was no longer that we needed to provide for the family. It was sending the kids door to door to get the candy. And then witchcraft started becoming more popular again. And they brought back seances and parties. And it became a time of enjoyment instead of begging. And that's when they started adding in pranks. So for trick or treat, it would be, you could knock on the door and it'd be like, would you give me a trick or would you give me a treat? And sometimes they would play pranks. The people who were answering the door would play pranks. I rarely see this anymore. I've seen it a couple of times taking my kids out. But
I've never seen
rarely.
it.
Yeah, one guy this one time, he came out with an axe. It was a fake one. The kids didn't know that.
Oh,
He came out with this axe. I'm giving you a trick. He's all, I'm giving you a trick. Here it is. And then he would slam it down. But then he was like, I'm just kidding. Here's a treat.
That's scary.
Yeah. But it was kind of like truth or dare. You know, you go knock on the door and be like, whoa, what am I going to get? What am I going to get?
Yeah.
Please be a treat.
Yeah. That's kind of more of a fun aspect. Yeah. As an adult, I'm less of a scaredy cat. Well, maybe no. I don't think I could handle it. Especially after watching Halloween and everything.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically all I found out how it became involved in America. So it really was about partying for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
until famine became a real thing.
It's a pretty interesting evolution, and it's crazy to think that like such enjoyment of my childhood is the result of suffering of people.
I know, right?
Thanks, famine.
And so I know, but had that not ever happened, we never would have went door to door.
Yeah.
It would still be just about partying and rituals and things like that.
Right. So, interesting dichotomy there.
All right. Yeah. So, Halloween would not really be complete without adding in some ghost stories, right, Sharon?
Oh, that's right.
Yes. So, we have to add in some Ouija board experiences. But before we dig into that, I just wanted to give you guys a little history about the Ouija board in case you didn't know. So, Ouija boards were first written about in China in 1100 AD during the Song Dynasty history. And the first board was actually made in Maryland in 1890 and patented by 1891. So I kind of want to go backtrack to the 1100s. So when they talked about it being in the dynasty, it meant that they used to make these boards, not boards, but it was like out of paper. And they would speak to the dead through this papyrus paper, kind of almost like with a scrying stone. And it would tell them yes or no, or there were letters that they could go back and forth. So then I found out that there have been a lot of scientific experiments involving the Ouija. They found out that we humans were actually controlling it, but with our minds.
That's what I've heard. That like most people are going to say it's just your subconscious.
Right. But that's pretty amazing in itself.
It is. And even if that's all it is, I still think it's an awesome tool.
Yeah. And who's to say, I mean, they've done experiments on ESP and tarot and mind reading and stuff like that. And so they do know that there's an outside force. They just don't know what that outside force is. That science can't explain it right now. Not at this time. So who's to say that something, even though our subconscious is wielding the planchette around, who's to say that there's still not an outside force that we can't detect?
Yeah, we don't exactly know how the Ouija board works. Like, I don't think that it's just psychically moving the planchette, because then shit would be moving around my house all the time. It's,
right.
I think it is channeling through me. But in essence, when I use it, I feel like different energies with different types of people that I'm talking to or entities. And my hands tingle. So there's definitely something through me, but I try to not even put any pressure on it. And I'll try to not even look at it. Like, I will only open my eyes sometimes when it's stopped moving so that I am not subconsciously moving it, because that's what I'm told. I'm like, you're just moving it. No, I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to watch where it's going. And if it lands on something while my eyes are closed, I don't think it's me.
Right. Exactly. So there's been a lot of taboo around this. I mean, people feel like that it could bring demons out into the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, that is it safe?
Right. Like my whole life. And most people, they have the most negative association with the Ouija board. And I was actually reading it's because of Captain Howdy from The Exorcist. Yes,
really?
Like before that, you know, it was mostly popularized in the spiritualist movement of the 1920s by the Fox sisters.
Right.
And so, like, people were using it all the time. It was a toy, and they would try to even market it as, like, a fun game for boys and girls to play and ask, like, who are you going to date? And those kinds of things.
Right.
And then when The Exorcist came out and her character is, like, talking to this force, you know, the demon, what is it, Pazuzu, calling himself Captain Howdy, people started getting really freaked out, and the sales kind of dipped. I just think that's when people got more afraid of it.
Right, right.
Because that movie came out, in the 60s or the 70s?
70s.
So that was pretty impactful, I think, for people back then. That movie shook people heavily.
Right. And so do you think that there's any real claim that only evil can possess the board?
Not at all. Like everything that we talk about with the occult and witchcraft, it's how you use the tool. So I think that all manner of otherworldly creatures, forces, and spirits that we can't even comprehend could possibly come through.
Do you think the spirit that we're talking to on the other end could be a negative entity, or that they could be left behind if you don't use the board properly?
I've read that, and so I go into it being as safe and cautious as possible, but I've never experienced anything negative myself. So before I do
Okay.
a Ouija board, now that I am a practicing witch, I will cast a circle. Before, all I would do is just have a candle lit for protection, so like a white candle. And now that I'm more educated in candles, I'll even get a black candle, which is to banish negativity. And so I do everything as safe as possible, and I take those precautions. And whenever you're talking to an entity, you need to make sure you say goodbye to it, no matter what. Always say goodbye before you're done. And something I read on the internet was that you should never let the planchette move in circles continuously, because that's said to be something opening a portal, which sounds very Hollywood and fake. I don't know if that's ever going to happen to me, but I'm still kind of aware of it, so I don't ever want that to be happening. If that ever were to happen, I would probably say goodbye immediately. But just make sure you say goodbye.
Yeah, I always make sure to say goodbye. Not that I've had very many of these experiences, but each time I've used it, I've always remembered to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And light a candle and say a protection spell. But I'm constantly doing protection spells. So I feel like it's just part of my everyday life
Right.
now.
Yeah, it does sound like that. And I would say, too, like tips for a Ouija board. I didn't used to do this in the beginning, but I think depending on who you're doing it with, you should always really trust them and have like a smaller group is better, because you don't want someone who's messing with you. You know, like someone who's in the group who's not really being genuine and maybe they are moving it. But you should also write down whatever the spirit is saying, or maybe even record it, because there's so many times where they're going to start spelling long things and you might get confused. Or even later, you can go back and reflect on it, and it's really cool to have that.
Right. And they may be speaking in a different language.
Yes.
So if you write the information down or you're recording it, then you can go back and look that information
Which
up.
has happened to me, yes, once. Yeah, there was something that may have been speaking Gaelic, because it was just like weird letters, but then you Google it and it was like, oh, that's the Gaelic word for mother. Cool. I think they maybe did answer me.
Right. Right.
And I would say you should keep your questions pretty simple. You don't want to ramble on and ask a whole bunch. You want to kind of keep it to the yes or no, or ask it to give you the letter of someone's name, maybe like, oh, what's the first letter of your name, or something like that. And if you really want to try to figure out, once you have contacted an entity, and they're claiming to be someone, then I think it's okay to ask questions. Like if you think that's your lost relative that came through, maybe ask them what's their maiden name, and can they spell that? Can they answer how many brothers you have? You know, kind of test them, because I don't know if you can always trust what's coming through.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then I also think it takes patience. I've had sessions that have lasted hours, and it's like the last thing you ask, then you start getting really good answers, or contacting someone you actually know, and you're like, oh shit, I'm glad I kept pushing through.
Right. Yeah, it takes a while for that door to become open.
Yeah, and I mean, even if I was getting answers, a lot of times it could just be nonsensical or boring or confusing. A lot of times I would say my questions are answered with kind of confusing nonsense.
Right. Yeah. And so then you're wondering, who are these people answering me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? Are there any kind of experiences that come to mind that you had?
Yeah, I actually have a couple. I do remember my very first experience with the board. I think I was probably 8, and I was having a sleepover with some friends. We all lived in the same neighborhood, and one of the girls was like, "It's my birthday, come on over." So we all went over. You know, the parents thought we were all in bed, but she was like, "Look, I've got this board. We're going to try to use it." And she's like, "I want to summon the devil."
Oh my God.
You know, because I feel like every kid, you know, wants to do that. And it was stormy outside. I mean, it's this typical, anything that you would see in a movie with little kids and a Ouija board. It was happening that night to me and my friends. So we're using this little Ouija board, and we're like, "I summon the devil, blah, blah, blah," whatever we were saying. I don't remember the words.
The most dangerous thing.
Exactly. And so then I started getting scared, like really, really scared, like pee your pants scared. So I stopped touching the board because I was afraid. And my friend, I don't remember her name, but it was her birthday, and she was like saying all the devil's names, Beelzebub,
wow,
Lucifer. She's like going on and on, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now in my little brain? And I stand up and I let go and I'm looking around and I swear down the hallway, I saw these 2 red eyes. So I scream as loud as I can and her dad comes up and he's like, what's going on in here?
Dang.
And I know, but I don't know if they were really red eyes that I saw. I mean, I was in a house that I'd been to their house 100 times in the daytime, but not very often at night. And so I don't know what I saw.
It was just the glow of a VCR.
Yeah, maybe. I saw these 2 little red eyes and I was like, and then her sister claimed to be possessed by the devil after that. So we had to exorcise it out of her the next day.
Did they see The Exorcist?
Probably.
Yeah. That's so scary. But,
Right.
I'm sure nothing was really happening. You guys were having your own little fit of hysteria and Salem witch trials.
Right.
Everyone was just losing their shit. I'm kind of impressed that girl your friend knew all those demon names. Like, I wasn't that schooled in the devil as a child.
No, me either. I didn't know all the names, but she's like saying all these names and I thought she was talking gibberish at the time.
Right. I just learned what Beelzebub was.
All I kept thinking was she was possessed. Then her sister was like, I'm possessed. So the next day we had to do this exorcism on her sister, but it turned out she just really wanted candy.
What?
It was some ploy to get candy.
Oh my gosh. So she's just like, the only way to free me is to give me candy.
Yeah, she's like, now I need Snickers.
Oh my God, you just described a Snicker commercial. Need a moment? Like, and it's just a possessed girl, and then the priest gives her the Snickers, and she's completely fine. Have a Snickers.
That's hilarious.
That is. Man,
Yeah.
I never played with the Ouija board as a young kid at all. I never had access to one or knew anybody that had one. And I really wanted to play with one. I was probably 19 or 18 at the time when it was Halloween was coming around. I lived in a house with a bunch of people. We all just split the rent of this house, and we're a bunch of young 20-year-olds partying, getting drunk. And so we were like, cool, we have this empty back room. No one lives in here at the time. Let's just do a seance in there. I bought my first Parker Brothers Ouija board from Toys R Us, which just still slays me that people think this demonic thing, it's just a toy.
It's just a toy.
So I bought it, and one of the girls there, she was a little bit older than me, and she was more familiar with, I guess, mediumship and talking to spirits. So she took over the seance. She taught me about lighting a candle in the first place. And that was...
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there was a big crowd of us, probably 6 people's hands on the board. So that's where I was kind of debating if anything was really happening. It didn't feel like a real experience to me at that time because I just didn't know if I could trust anybody there. But there was one person who ended up, I think, talking to a grandparent or something, or a parent. So they had a genuine experience, and I think ended up going in tears over what they were telling them. So it was kind of crazy to witness. But, I don't really remember it that well. That was before I was writing things down, and I don't trust all those people in that seance that well. So Since then, I still have that board, and I still use that board to this day, and I make sure I cleanse it and stuff. But I've used it in more intimate situations with just me and one other person that I really, really trust. And I can tell that we're not applying any pressure. And sometimes I'll just put a pinky on there and just see what happens. I did it in my old apartment with my roommate, and we ended up talking to a spirit who had died in our apartment before we lived there, and we kind of found out that she had MS, and she was just kind of telling us how long she lived there and things like that. And it wasn't a scary experience at all, and it wasn't anything bad. It was just kind of interesting, and it felt kind of cool to be able to connect to the other side and to get answers.
That's really touching. I mean, to find out that she passed away. Oh, and MS is so debilitating.
Yeah, I think she was young too. And again, this is before I wrote things down. So I can't go back and look at it. Now I like to log everything.
Yeah, same.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to share one? Another one?
I don't have very many stories, but I'll tell. So I remember my daughter, she wanted to buy a Ouija board. And so I was like, okay, you can. It's your money. You could do what you want with it. So she got the same one that you did, the Parker Brothers one. Probably she was 14. And I was like, well, let's be safe about it. So I had to teach her how to use it. And we lit the candle, and I have one of those handheld recorders, like for EVP sessions.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so I had that on the table and we used the board. But what's really crazy at my house at the time was that, well, we were living in an apartment. It's really noisy. And then also I have younger children who are not always quiet. And so we have to, when I'm trying to teach her how to use all of this stuff, I'm like, okay, well, we have to deal with the TV that's going and the
Power
kids are
through.
playing video games. Yeah, we have to power through. And so we were able to get something mostly on the EVP session. All you could hear was the moving of the planchette. And it's hard to say because there was so much noise background. I kept thinking that we were hearing other things when I was re-listening back to the information or
That's pretty cool.
the EVP.
I never thought how you probably could get EVPs.
Right. Had it been quieter,
Yeah.
I think that we could have gotten more out of the experience, but it was all kind of gibberish and we were writing everything down and I made sure that she kept all of the information. So somewhere in her books, she has the old sessions that we would do.
Yes.
But
I actually have one of my old books in front of me now, and it was a session that I did with my sister Tabitha, and it was probably like the coolest Ouija board session I've ever had. But
ooh.
it began as nonsense. So, like, we're trying to get through to people or just try to even contact, like, aliens or outside forces. I think this was the beginning of my, like, opening and awakening to aliens. And we would just get this thing that it was like ZN. It kept going back and forth and saying that was its name. And would be like, are you an alien? And it's like, yes. It's like, what planet are you from? And it was like ZN, ZA, ZN, ZA, ZA, ZA. And we're like, oh my God. And we just were like laughing and we were like, let's just let this thing go. And like, it just went back and forth between all these weird ZYNs for like a good 35 letters. And we were like, well, this is a really complicated language. And so it was really funny. And, you know, we wrote all this down and it is like complete nonsense. So then from there, we were like, okay, goodbye. We tried to see if we could channel any kind of witches to come through. We got a couple of answers and again, nothing solid. And we had been doing this, talking to people for just maybe a minute or two and then taking a break, talking to people for like maybe 30 seconds, taking a break. But the whole time period was probably like several hours. And my room was covered in sage. Like I just kept lighting the sage and lighting incense. And like it got so bad that like we started crying from all the smoke in the room. And it was just so intense. And then we were just wanting to have a real good experience. And so we just kept trying. And we were like, okay, let's just try one more time. And then we're going to put it up. You know, it's getting late. It's been a couple hours at this point. And then I think we asked it. Let me see. I have it written down. We asked if there were any spirits that would like to come forward. And it just spelled RAY, which is our grandfather.
Yeah.
And I was so scared. Like my heart was pounding and I was nervous and I was defensive and I was skeptical. And I didn't know what to ask. So I was like, okay, are you a relative of mine? You know, and it said yes. And I'm still skeptical. So I wanted to get proof. I asked it to spell the last name. And I won't say it on podcast, but you know, our grandparents, they have a pretty unique, was it German last name?
Yes.
And he spelled it correctly. And I was flabbergasted. And I was kind of convinced, and like my defenses, I think, just started melting. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take this as this is what it is. And I'm just really nervous, but let's go with it. And I wanted to see how he felt about things. I was asking him some questions. And I even asked him, like, hey, is it safe to be using the Ouija board? And he said yes. And I asked if he had any messages for me. And what he spelled was really sweet. He spelled LOVE. And I was so touched. I was so touched. I was like, that's all he has to say. Like, love you. Like, love.
Aww.
And it was really, really cool. And I was like asking him questions like, hey, do you like, you know, the man I chose to marry? He never got to meet him. So I was like, do you like Wayne? And he's like, yes. And so I was just like feeling like I had questions I never got to ask him. And, you know, I never got to say goodbye before he passed. And I just kind of got closure on that and talked to him about that. And I tried to kind of get more into like questions about the afterlife and what he was experiencing. And I was trying to figure out if he was watching me every day. And he said no, and I kind of tried to figure out, is that because you just don't have, like, the capability? Like, are you busy? And he basically kind of told me he was working on stuff, and he was doing things. And he was the spirit who came through and ended up spelling a Cornish word for mother, and he spelled M-A-B-M. So I felt like he was maybe with his mother.
Oh, and that's what he used to call grandma.
What?
Mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
I was wondering that. So
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm crying. I'm like,
oh my
thinking
gosh,
about Grandpa and crying.
It's kind of intense to
it is.
think about him talking to me through this board, and I don't want to offend anyone in memory of him by saying this happened, because there's plenty of people who will find this offensive. There's plenty of people who would be skeptical of this, but for me, this was a genuine experience.
Oh, that's so amazing. Oh, it's so touching.
He said he was with passed away relatives, and he misses grandma, and it was really sweet.
Oh, he did love his mother a lot, and she was really an amazing woman. I'm glad that I was able to experience having her in my life until I was in the 4th grade when she passed away. So I was able to, out of all of the cousins, I feel like I was able to get really close to her. Because you guys weren't really around, for a good portion of that time.
No.
Yeah.
That is really cool. And, family's so important, and it's nice to spend time with them while we have them. And
yeah.
So when I kind of felt satisfied with my experience, and when you're in the moment of using a Ouija board, it's really draining. You can get shaky. You can get dizzy. And the board... The planchette with my grandfather, it moved very slow. Like, his energy was very low. I would ask a question, and it would just inch over to the answer very slowly. And we asked if there was anyone else who'd like to come through. And then I was with my sister, Tabitha, and we're half siblings, so she has a different set of grandparents than me, technically. And her grandmother came through the board. And, again, we were kind of defensive. We're trying to ask her questions, and she passed the test. Basically, she confirmed who she was. She said the answers we needed to hear. And so Tabitha starts asking her these questions, and as soon as she came through initially, the board's speed changed. Like, her grandma was energetic and spunky and like had all this energy, and it just went really quickly with the planchette. And I was like, wow, does that feel like your grandma? And she's like, yeah, this is just like my grandma. Like, it's moving really quick and stuff.
Oh, and how long ago did she pass away? Do you know?
I'm really bad at dates and things like that. It was within, I feel like, the last 10 years, I want to say.
I was just wondering if it was before or after Grandpa.
I think it was after.
Okay.
Yeah, so she had like a stronger, I guess, energy, and it was really cool because when different spirits do come through, you do feel different energy.
Right.
I had one recently, an experience where something came through that was so strong, I could barely handle it. Like, I started breathing extremely heavily. I got really nauseous, and I was super shaky, and that's like the most intense feeling I've ever had. And it was claiming to be like a spirit, and it was trying to tell us what it was, but we were kind of skeptical, and we only were on the board for like a couple hours, but it's rare, I feel like, for a family member to come through, and sometimes I feel like it's better just to let them rest, but when you get that experience, it's pretty cool.
Right. That's pretty amazing. I love that. Yeah,
I'm glad I could share that. And, I don't think I would ever talk to him again on the board, but if he were to come through, that would be cool. But I feel like I'll just let him be,
Right. You got what you needed out of that experience. That's so great.
And I think that's the experience I go back to. When I think about Ouija boards and people telling me that they're evil, I'm like, no way. There's no way.
Right.
And yeah. I think it can be pretty cool to have a personal experience. Have you had any other times where something came through or a person you knew came through?
Knowing that we were going to do this episode, so the other night I just sat with my kids in the living room and we prepared the area, and I just got done doing an intense session of Reiki on my daughter and was removing negative energy from her. And then we were like, you know what, let's use the Ouija board. I was like, I'm pretty exhausted, but let's go ahead and try this out. And we immediately got results. Like, I feel like somebody was immediately here, and I don't know if that's because I'd been doing Reiki for an hour and then transitioned into doing this other thing, but For me, it's really weird. Like the few times that I've used the Ouija board, which is probably maybe less than 10, I always get somebody tapping on my shoulder.
Oh,
always.
Wow. That's awesome. I've only had that feeling once in my life, and it wasn't during a Ouija board. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I'm like, oh my gosh. But we didn't do it for very long. But I think that what we determined that had come through was somebody from Norway. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to take us to this old graveyard, like from the 1100s. They spelled it out for us. I don't have my notepad in front of me, but it was like some graveyard that was made in like 1100 BC in Norway.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's where it took us. My son was like, oh my gosh, it was a word that they were spelling out, because my daughter was like, that's not even a word.
Right.
I'm like, it's probably foreign.
Exactly. Like, that's why it's so good to spell things or record them, because like you said, you can go research that and get enlightened later.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So that's it. I don't really have anything else, but I would love to hear more of your stories if you have any. And if we have time.
You know, I feel like I told the best ones. I don't have like anything else to really impart as far as Ouija board tales. But I do encourage, listeners out there that are curious to go out and try. Just be safe, be open-minded, and have fun.
Yes, and it's not a devil board.
No.
I've heard so many people say that. Oh, the devil's in there.
Not at all.
Like, okay.
You can call it a Ouija board, a spirit board. I think I've even heard it called a witch's board.
Witch's board, talking board. I've heard that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you can find out who you'll go to the prom with.
That's right. It's going to be Jimmy.
Yeah, I was going to say Jimmy. It's always Jimmy.
It's always Jimmy.
Well, on that note, we just want to say we hope you guys have a really good Hallows Eve. And thank you for listening. And make sure to join us next Wednesday for a talk on the Roswell incident. We're excited about this episode. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And check out our blog at cousinscoven.home.blog. And we're also on YouTube, iTunes, and anywhere else podcasts can be found. If you want to send in your questions, or if you have any paranormal experiences, send them into cousinscoven2@gmail.com.
May you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and join each other. Blessings to all.